1985 to 1987. So please help me welcome our speaker, Paul Solman.
Hi, everybody. You didn't mention that I also won a James Beard Award. Unfortunately, not for cooking. It was but what I thought I should do is, and if any of you,
Get it.
well, I'm just throwing this out there. If anybody wants to start a restaurant, and I would not say that now is the perfect time to start a restaurant in this country, but if anybody wanted to start a restaurant, they could say, you could cut me in for a small percentage, and it would be James Beard award-winning Paul Solman's, and then we just wouldn't answer the question as to what I won the James Beard Award for, but nobody would think to ask, I don't suppose. Anyway, so that's another of my greatest accolades.
So we know that this is a question and answer session.
Right.
So I'm going to go ahead and start out with one of my questions.
Please.
And if, somebody would just pop their hand up when you want to ask a question, and we'll keep going around the circle until we run out of them.
And I'll just tell you, if there are no questions, I will cold call you. That's what I do when I visit high school classrooms and college classrooms and so forth. So everybody, yeah, good, very good, Julia. I see that you have your question right there.
Okay. So my first question is, if the government rolls out a second stimulus plan, how do you think that will affect the economy?
Well, it depends what the stimulus plan is, right? The particulars are particulars we're not going to know for years because nobody reads the entire bill. I mean, all the stories about what was in the first couple. Where things get put in at the last minute, lobbyists put stuff in, and also it's just so hard to interpret because it's, if you do a law quickly, if you write a law quickly, then the people for whom there is an incentive to game the law and get the most out of it will inevitably do so, and then you have to rewrite the law and so forth. So it's tremendously complicated as to to be able to say what the results of even the best designed law would be, or a stimulus package, which would be, after all, legislation, as much less the legislation that's going to come out of some, sausage making process in a highly polarized, highly politicized election year. I think that some kind of stimulus package, let me start the sentence over again. I certainly fear for broad and important sectors of the economy without a stimulus package of some sort. Again, let's not specify because it's impossible to specify. But I found it curious that, at least as I read it today, the administration is saying, let's not have, I think I read it correctly, that they want to put off a stimulus package till after the election. And I don't understand the economic logic of that. You can speculate all you want, and I'd be no better at speculating than any of the rest of you as to what the political idea is behind it and so forth. But I'm just an economics, guy, and that's the question you're asking. And it seems to me an extremely high risk strategy, or it would be taking a huge risk to not put some stimulus package into effect sooner rather than later. You've seen, all of you, how many layoffs there have been in the last week. And I've done stories about the airline industry, about the hospitality industry in general, and so forth. I mentioned, I wisecrack about not the best time in the world to start a restaurant. These are all hanging by a thread,
Mhm.
these industries. Look what happened with the second biggest theater chain in the country just yesterday. It was laying off 40,000 people. Now, there's tremendous churn in this economy, and you don't want to go, oh my God, 40,000 people, end of the world. But it just, as best I can tell, without any further stimulus propping up, I don't know that stimulus is the right word even, maybe it's just retrenching or just keeping industries in place. It seems to me it's an extremely perilous strategy from an economic point of view. On the other hand, as the stock market, what was about even today, it's back up to around 28,000. The Dow, I mean, to use the common number that we all sort of are familiar with, not because the Dow is in any particularly good measure, but it's as good as any. And it's back up to where it was before the pandemic. I mean, so that there are lots of reasons for that. We could discuss them. Certainly the tax cut is a huge part of it because companies are more profitable because they're paying less in taxes. And share of stock is basically a share in the profits of the company. But it's hard to imagine that investors aren't expecting that there will be a stimulus to save or shore up companies that otherwise won't be able to meet their debts.
Right.
Leave aside for a moment all the people who will not be able to make the rent, and therefore all the landlords who will not be able to pay their taxes, and therefore all the cities, municipalities that won't be able to pay their workers.
Yeah. Julia, do you want to go next? You got to unmute.
Yeah, if I can unmute, yeah. There's an if there. My first question was kind of the opposite of hers, is what's going to be the consequence of no stimulus?
Well, that's what
and then are you hearing, I guess I have two-part question. Are you hearing general talk of other options out there? I'm sure there's all kinds of stuff, but I haven't heard of anything sticking. And then the other question is, I'm a CPA and I deal with a lot of small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And we're kind of the opposite of up north. We hit our busy season starting November, and everybody of bank. November through April is when they make the money for the year.
Sure.
And so I've had a lot of talks with business owners that in Florida, they think they'll be fine through winter, but come May, they may sit down and have a conversation of, we give up. We'll make enough money now at our high season that we'll give up. But I imagine up north, it's just the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I'm 76, so I stay relatively sequestered. I mean, I'm in a so-called quarantine, a pod with our grandkids. None of them are going to school. They're all being homeschooled or, remote learning. But I don't go into stores very much. I'll pop into the Starbucks once I've pre-ordered, and I'll be in and out. And today I held my breath when I was at a Starbucks. Whether that did me any good, I have no idea. But I was pretty much out of breath when I got out of the Starbucks, and I just dashed in and out. Maybe I was walking too fast. But when I was in one part of town, not far from here, trying to get a car key copied, there was nothing. This was a strip mall, one I've known for years, and there was nothing going on there. I mean, I ordered some food from a place I've gone to for years. I just sat outside at a picnic table until they brought it to me. There was no one there. So yes, I think we are feeling it now. I would not be terribly sanguine about what's going to happen in your area there. My wife and I have been going to Sarasota for most years for the last few years. No chance we're going to Sarasota this year. No chance. We're not going to we're not going to drive. And we're not going to take a plane. I actually don't think planes are particularly dangerous, but I'm not taking the chance. And our daughter would not let us stay in the quarantine if we did. We'd have
It's
to quarantine.
amazing to me. I have one of my business owners does pharmacy, and they said they have spent the last 2 weeks just transferring scripts because Florida is basically open season. They've opened all 100% capacity for all the bars and restaurants. There's almost no mask orders anywhere, and people are coming. It'll be a mess. It'll be a hot mess, but there are a lot of people who, regardless of age and health, are still coming.
They may be coming right now, but I look, what do I know? I mean, I don't dare make predictions about the future,
I know.
but I would be very surprised if I mean, look what happens. Now I'm just talking like just one of you. It's not that I have any particular insight here, but I mean, when I see what happens in the NFL, for example, in the Tennessee Titans game getting put off till whenever, what's happening in New York right now, when it starts back up again, and there is reason to believe, again, you don't know, but there's certainly reason to believe that it will.
Oh, he got muted. Where's Trace?
You can hear me, right? No?
Yeah.
Okay. I said unmute. Then Florida has got to take a huge hit if that happens. No? I mean, you're on the ground there, and so if
Not logical, but it's happening.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just, I can see how it's happening now because there hasn't been a huge spike. It's now down a little bit again. It's fewer cases, or barely more cases than this week than 2 weeks ago. I watched the New York Times does numbers every day, but deaths are down, even as cases are somewhat up. Deaths have been down for weeks. So, and now if the president's, if this set of treatments that he's apparently gotten, the monoclonal antibodies and the remdesivir and, the several treatments he's gotten, and Fauci said today apparently that he thinks that these monoclonal antibodies were what work very well on Ebola, and so maybe this is this is really the answer. And if people think, well, okay, I won't die, I'll be better in a hurry as soon as they can implement this stuff, I could see how there would be a renewed sense of confidence about all this. But it's just a probabilistic universe, and I'd say the odds of something going wrong so that people like myself aren't going to Florida this winter, because it's summer for you, is much higher than what you're hearing. That's all.
Right. Now I'll read a couple questions that were in the chat box. One is, which sectors of the economy are likely to recover the fastest and which are the slowest?
Well, the slowest are clearly places where people congregate, where large numbers of people congregate. That's why that theater chain went out of, I don't think it went out of business, but why they're going to lay off 40,000 people. And that's why the airlines are only back to about 50% now. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's a chance. This I feel strongly about. I could, of course, be wrong, but I don't think there's a chance that the airlines come back to anything beyond maybe 80% of what they were before. And if you think about, if you lose 20% of your business, that was a fairly fat margin business in the last 10 or 15 years because of all the consolidation in the industry. But you lose 20% of your business. And because of just what we're doing now. I mean, this is happening everywhere. Why would you go to a business meeting that you didn't need to go to? I mean, I wouldn't have come unless I was in the area. I wouldn't have been there with you guys in any case. But all kinds of institutions can do what we're doing right now at no cost. Don't even have to take an Uber anywhere, right? I mean, that my job, I think of my job at the PBS NewsHour as a, it's not a canary in the coal mine, it's a bellwether. It's a harbinger of what will happen broadly. My job, typically, if I did one of the stories that I linked you to today, the last two were shot in, they were about van life and work campers, people who live in RVs and the like. Those stories were shot in January. And then we followed up, what's happening now. And it turns out you can't get a campsite in this country because there's so many people out on the road now. So the story is more relevant than it was even when we shot it. But you can't do a story like that, would not have done a story like that, did not do those stories like that without taking the Uber to the airport, going through the whole routine at the airport, buying the airline ticket, going to Arizona, booking a hotel, then and all kind of, I don't want to tell you the stories of, of what it was like, and we had to switch hotels, and then of course a per diem, to cover our, the expenses of eating and the rest, and a cameraman whom we had to bring out to Arizona. And then, so on average, those stories cost, don't quote me, but somewhere $5,000 to $7,000 a story. Now a story, same story done. I interview you, I interview Deborah, I interview all of you, let's say. I did this with a Rotary Club. I think you guys heard about me from another Rotary Club. And we did a story where one of the sequences was with that Rotary Club. I went back there and interviewed, a group of people, because it was easy to get a lot of people responding at the same time, raise your hands, that kind of thing. A story costs $200 now, maybe, for, rights to some footage that we're going to use.
Right.
So just think about that for every organization out there. Not every organization obviously does, television news, but it's so much easier. And there are all these advantages. I had interviewed Deborah, and I want to then, geez, I forgot to ask her a question. Deborah, please wear the same pink blouse there. Okay, that's the only thing I'd say, because, so it'll look, it's, continuous.
Right.
We've done that. That was impossible before. Before you'd have to go back out to Arizona. So there are all these advantages, and it was like I'm saying about my friend who teaches at Barnard, gets guys from India. And now people are accustomed to this. So, and we're at the dawn, right, of this technology. It's going to be, in a few years, it'll be virtual reality or holograms, or, and at some point, maybe not in my lifetime, I don't suppose, but probably in yours, most of yours, the brain won't even be able to distinguish, because it'll be haptic, you'll have gloves, you'll have, surround sound. And so why would you incur the expense to yourself, the wear and tear, and the out-of-pocket expense of going and doing stuff? So back to the question, which is what industries are going to be most deleteriously affected by this? It's any industry where you can replace face-to-face, not face-to-face, this is face-to-face.
Right.
In some sense, this is more intimate, I think. I see all your names, for example. Carol, I see you, and I can call, Marion. That would be impossible if I were talking to you live, right?
Right.
I wouldn't be able to be as intimately. I wouldn't see you as large. Some of you would be in back, some of you would be in front. I wouldn't be able to make eye contact as I'm now doing with every person here, except Chris, who's only got his or her name up. But so there are all these advantages that will continue to be developed. But that's just dramatically impactful on airlines,
Mhm.
any kind of business convention, sports. I don't know if anybody watched the Patriot. I'm a New England Patriots fan. I apologize for having to admit, but I watched the Patriots game against the Kansas City Chiefs. There were 16,000 tickets sold. There weren't 16,000 people there. I mean, you know, and you think about it, you know, a football ticket is what, $100 on average or something like that. Kansas City, and that stadium has got, I don't know, 70,000 people. So, you know, if it's only 55,000 times 100, whatever that number is, 5.5 million, something like that, dollars every time. So forget, you know, we don't care about the owners of the NFL, I don't suppose, but all the people all the concession people, all the people who work in concessions, all the people at parking, all the, you know, and I mean, you can figure the industries out as well as I can. I mean, I've interviewed people in the airlines and restaurants and so forth. Yeah, Carol, you have a question. You have to unmute yourself. Carol, you have to unmute. Yeah, there you go.
I did. Going along with what you were just talking about, by the way, I am older than you are, and I used to read Mother Jones.
Oh my gosh.
So,
well, good.
I loved it. I was sad to see it go.
Well,
But
no, it still exists. It still exists.
does it?
Oh yeah. I haven't had anything to do with it for, you know, many decades, but yeah.
I was in San Francisco and Berkeley, so, you know, it just sort of,
Yeah, no.
it happened. I was going to ask about the changing workforce. And you were just talking about all the different industries that are going to have to be run differently. And it occurs to me that the workforce is going to have to change dramatically. And perhaps we are going to have to do a whole bunch of retraining. So those people who no longer have the jobs, you know, with the airlines, or no longer have the jobs with, you know, the movie theater or whatever, you know, what are we going to do to be able to retrain them so that they can be part of this economy going forward? I mean, not everybody can do Zoom. I remember when I was working in the Silicon Valley 25 years ago, we were just talking about doing remote working.
Right.
And, you know, that has now turned into really remote working. But we were constantly trying to figure out what to do with our employees who could not work remotely.
Right.
So what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that your question prompts something I might have said earlier, or should have said earlier, which is what I think this has done, and I think the examples I was giving showed this, but what this has done is it has accelerated a lot of processes that were already happening, as you say, even 25 years ago.
Right.
The people have been talking about how education is going to be disrupted by technology for years, decades even, you know, several decades. What this, by forcing people to do what we're doing now, is acclimating people to it, showing them how much cheaper it is and how much more convenient it is, and thereby accelerating the process. So what was already, and specifically to your question, Carol, is that the issue you raise has been an issue in this country is almost, well, not quite as long as I've been
Right.
a business and economics reporter, but almost as long. I mean, when you ask that question, I remember, I flash on an encounter I had, and I know the year because it was the Bush-Clinton campaign of 1992, and I was in Connecticut at the General Dynamics shipyard in Groton, Connecticut, and they were talking about decommissioning some of the nuclear subs, or they weren't going to build a new one, maybe it was, I don't remember. And I was talking to a worker, interviewing him, and I said, but we don't need nuclear subs, right? I mean, that's the argument. I think it was President Bush, then President Bush, the father, who was actually going to decommission, and this guy was pissed off about it. And I said, well, but his argument, the administration's argument, is these things are obsolete. They aren't needed. He said, yes, but it's my job. And I said, well, so they'll retrain you. And that's, I was trying to, not bait him, but to, get a response from him. I wasn't making an argument. I said, but then the argument is you'll be retrained. And he said, retrain me for what? And so my view of not the proximate future even, but although maybe a lot more proximate than any of us would have thought, but certainly medium term is a resistance to being retrained, certainly for people who are older, for obvious reasons, old dogs, new tricks, all of that kind of stuff. Technology, you're talking about the difficulty, who was talking about the different, Julia, was it you who were talking about the difficulty of getting the kids, your kids, right? Not only that, but in a country as politically fractured as this one is, are we going to have the kind of massive expenditure? We can't even get a coronavirus bill through now, right? We're going to have the kind of massive investment that we would need to make retraining effective, attractive. I'd say I wouldn't bet on that. Now there are jobs which are not hard to learn, which lots of people could do, which need to get done. Clearly, rebuilding infrastructure would be one. That would be for younger people. People your and my age, Carol, are probably not going to go out and, lay asphalt. And there's a tremendous need for person-to-person kind of caretaking, right? Whether it's daycare for little kids so parents can work, or take care of people like us, right? Not yet, but soon enough, or eventually, unless we just keel over or get hit by a truck. And so it's not that there aren't things for human beings to do, at least for, in the proximate future. I don't know what, the future holds. But the idea of getting from here to there, the kind of investment that would need to be made, I just don't see it happening. To use your word again, retraining. I used to have, when I taught, in addition to teaching at Harvard Business School, I taught up until about a couple of years ago, I taught in New Haven, both at Yale and at the local community college there. And I had a number of presentations and so forth, in one of which I talked about this issue. And I had this idea of, it was half tongue in cheek, but it was, as Roosevelt administration put in the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, for young people, $1 a day, lived and cleaned up the national parks. Massive program. So I had this idea of the MMM, the mass massage mobilization. I thought, well, everybody could use a massage, right? It's good for you. Not during COVID, I get, but this is many years before COVID came onto the scene. So a government program where you hired people, you subsidized for poor people the massages themselves, and I figured out, I can't do the numbers for you now, but you could hire millions of people if everybody got a massage a week, for example, and you never had more than 5 massages a day because a masseur's hands would fall off beyond that number or something. You'd have I don't remember how many millions of people you could employ just doing that. So yes, what's not to like? Leave aside the scuzzy joints and all the things that might happen that would go wrong, but would go wrong in any program. Is that going to happen? Are we going to have anything that would approximate a mass massage, the MMM, you see, CCC, MMM, mass massage mobilization? I just don't see it. And I think it's much more likely, frankly, that in the medium term, let's say, that that people are, I don't mean to sound cynical about this, but that people are essentially, the people who haven't got a job in the workforce that pays them anything and that is in any way gratifying, we will buy them off. We, the people who have jobs, will buy them off, and whether it's universal basic income or something like that, it's already to some extent happened with, you know, the disability program. I think there are 14 million Americans on disability. And with the advent of technology and virtual reality and so forth, they may be relatively content. Because, and look right now, the participation rate among white men in this country, young white men from, I may screw up the ages slightly. It's like 18 to 54, let's say, but maybe I'm off on both sides, but not by much. That's the lowest labor participation rate since they started reckoning these things. What are those people doing? I mean, they're not starving to death. I mean, maybe there is a hunger issue right now because of COVID, but they're living in their, you know, the cliche is that the stereotype is that they're living in their parents' basement and playing video games. You know, those of us who work for a living and get great gratification from it think, oh my God, what a horror. But I'm not sure it's worse than, you know, delivering for DoorDash or whatever, the jobs of the future that so many people will be clamoring to get.
Tony.
You know, I work in the real estate industry, and I'm coming off one of the best years I've ever had. And I'm licensed in 2 states, the state of Florida and the state of Alabama. And the number one thing that I see as far as my industry, I can't speak to anybody else's industry, is the lack of qualified help as far as your basic labor jobs, your plumbers, your carpenters, your roofers. You know, anybody in Florida right now, if they needed a job, they could go to their local plumbing company or roofing company and get a job, because hands down, there's just not enough of them go. We're 6 weeks out for roofs right now.
Yep.
I honestly feel, and I guess this is part of my opinion, but part of the question is that there has been a push for several years for everybody to seek higher education. I, for one, am not a person of higher education, and I mean, I've gotten higher education. I just did not go and seek out a degree because I really didn't think it would be beneficial as an auto mechanic to have a 4-year degree to work on cars, and that's what I came out of high school learning. But there's been this push probably for the last 20 years that you must go to college, you must go to college, you must go to college. And I have my 20-something nephew in New York City that's calling me to co-sign on his college loan.
Right.
And I'm like,
did you do it?
Wait a second.
Did you do it?
No, because he doesn't understand that if he stepped off off the curb, got hit by a bus, that loan still has to be paid for. But my question of the whole thing is that
your state has to pay for it even if you get hit by the bus.
Yep. So my question is how are we going to go about convincing our younger generation that these are jobs that can be fulfilled and make great livings at it. There's many people I know that are in these building trades that are making 6 and 7 figures as business owners. And you know, the question is what are we going to do as a country to kind of recurb that mindset that you know, you got to go get a tech job, or you got to go get a 4-year degree, or you know, I think, and with this COVID, we've had to rethink everything, and I think this is just catapulting the bigger problem.
Look, one thing, so for everybody, not just Tony, what he just said, I have heard everywhere I've been in this country. Not that the real estate business is doing so well, but that you can't find good help. I think the first person I had on camera saying that was in 1989. A woman at New York Life Insurance Company telling me why they were sending the insurance claims forms to Ireland, to rural Ireland, to get processed. I remember this woman vivid.
Show up for an application.
What?
We can't even get people to show up to fill out applications.
That's every I can tell you story after story. Industrial lathe maker in Ohio, restaurants in Provincetown, Massachusetts, a factory in Indiana. Every kind of business, the same complaint over and over again. Either people won't show up to apply, they come in and they can't pass a drug test, they look dissolute, they and the one that really surprised me, except I've heard this now probably half a dozen times with people I'm interviewing on camera, people who take the job and don't show up. You know, now these are not great jobs, but you've done that yourself, or you know people who've done that?
No. The one thing that I've heard over since this COVID thing started is, why should I go get a job when the government's paying me more money to sit here?
Believe me, this predates COVID by decades.
Oh yeah.
This is not, you know, COVID. Yes, I know. I know people who can't, for whom this has exacerbated the problem because they're getting the extra $600 a week. But that's running out. So that problem that's a very short-term problem. That is not the big picture problem at all. We could debate the merits of that, and clearly that was one of those bills that was not thought through with regard to, paying people even more than they were making before, because you got 50% of the state, depending on your state, you got 50% of your old salary from the unemployment insurance, and then you got an extra $600 right on the barrelhead. But that's not the issue. The issue is just what you say. The issue is people for whom these jobs are just déclassé. They're infradig. They're beneath their dignity. They're not what people want to do. I don't actually think that. I think the college story is overplayed. Remember, only a third of all Americans get a 4-year college degree. That's all. And that number hasn't changed in years. It was going up and up and up to a third, and now it's been a third for, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, something like that. So, hovering around a third. So that's not, most people are not getting a college degree. Maybe, if you count.
And I say that because, back years ago when we were all coming out of high school, it's what are you going to do after high school? What are you going to do after high school? They don't even ask that question anymore. They go, what are you going to do after college?
Well, but
so
that depends on who you're dealing with. I'm telling you, it's only 33% of people get a 4-year degree. I mean, so yeah. It's a small minority. The issue is, all I'm saying is the issue is much more pervasive than got to go to college or else. It's I'm not going I'm not going to be a plumber. Damned if I'm going to be a
Yeah.
plumber. And damned if I'm
Yeah.
going to show up on time and somebody's going to tell me what the hell to do. And damned if I, you know, it's much
Well,
more
Jack, you
privileged.
could probably say that about the people that have started a 4-year degree and those who finished it. Like,
Well, there is
you
a
know,
there's a big, yes, there's a huge discrepancy there because,
with that.
yeah, no, that's true. There are people who started,
But
yes.
it all boils down to work ethic.
And by the way, it isn't a 4-year degree. Half of the people who starting community college, you know, they're getting associate's degrees. So that's not, you know, it's maybe of the people who apply for, who actually, I'm going to make up the number, but it's only something like 45% of people even start trying to get a 4-year degree. Okay. But it may be less than that. Yeah, no, there's no question that the work ethic, and it's a function of a more and more unequal economy where you either make it big or you're driving for DoorDash. There's this disconnect between what you do and what A, as you point out, you want to do. That is, you don't want to be a plumber, and B, how do you become a plumber?
Right.
Yes, you're right. The people I've talked to, I'm doing a story about this right now. We've been doing it for months. It got shelved because of COVID. The people who run plumbing companies say, my God, give me anybody. As long as they're motivated, I can teach them how to be a plumber. It'll take a few years,
Yeah.
but they have to really work at it, but it's not going to be that hard. But this country is richer than it's ever been. It's more unequal than it's been since probably since the 1890s even, or, you know, at least the late 1920s. And so all these forces combine, and you've got the situation you've got. Then Carol asked the question, you know, retrain them. And you're saying they're not even going to go to the retraining, right?
Well, at least the younger ones.
So this is I
The other part that you know, I guess our society is a little disconnected as a whole, because we read about all these overnight successes. They worked hard for 20 years and now all of a sudden they're an overnight success.
Yeah.
You know?
Sure.
There's no emphasis put on that first 20 years where they were just barely making ends meet. And I think that's where a lot of the success stories are lost. And that's where the disconnect from those who don't want to even try, even want to even get started because they don't think they have a chance.
Yeah, but I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to blame the media for not telling the story? That if I do the story about how hard
they only
you work.
have so much time to give
What?
too, but
What?
I said they only have so much time to pass the story along, so
Yeah,
they've got to hit their point.
Yeah, right, of course, and nobody's going to tune in. You know, so.
Yes.
Oh, Kathy wants to ask a question. Kathy, sorry.
So I'm in the banking industry, commercial banking, and April and May, all I did was live PPP, and now starting on the forgiveness. But where do you see, I mean, there were a lot of sectors that weren't able to apply for PPP funds, investors, you know, that have the thrift stores and
Yeah.
the office buildings and such like that, where a lot of their tenants, they had to, you know, defer some rents and such like that. You know, I've been through and seen where the bank closures happened years ago. How do you see, or where do you see the banking industry going with, because of COVID and what has transpired over all these months, to see, I mean, you know, investors, a lot of them are real estate rich and cash poor. So, you know, I see that, you know, some of the banks already have been more conservative in their new lending. What do you kind of see in that industry?
Well, I think commercial banking is a you know, you know this better than I do, Kathy, that it's an industry that's being fundamentally disrupted. uh, and to have branches and pay for them, to have people doing things which algorithms can do just as easily, is a business that's ripe for disruption. And of course, the more the less risk you take, the lower your margins, because the lower just because you're going to be if you're not taking risk, you're not getting the interest rate commensurate with the risk. So I see commercial, insofar as the banks that will distinguish themselves from one another or be better or worse off are banks that, well, I'm going to give a lecture about banking to a banker. It makes no sense. And plus, it so depends on, what's the portfolio of the bank, and what's the loan portfolio look like, and are you local or are you national, or are you in real estate or not in real estate? Did you hold on to the CDSs or didn't you? As assets, or did you pass them through fast enough? Look what happened in 2008 and 2009, where a company, it's not a bank technically, but a financial firm like Bear Stearns goes on. It's out of business within months, because it held on to, in part because it held on to securities that turned out to not be worth anywhere near, or loans that turned out to not be worth what they were thought to be worth, and then those loans were collateral on other loans, and then that those loans were called in because they didn't have the collateral, lost its value, and that was the story of Bear Stearns, the story of Lehman Brothers. And it would be the story of any bank going.
Right.
Hey, Tony, who's that? Who is that, Tony?
That's Mr. Emerson.
That's my son, Emerson.
Emerson,
He said
how you
hi.
doing? Hey, nice to see you.
He says hi.
Emerson, I'm gonna cold call you, Emerson, to ask me a question. But Tony might have to feed it to you. So Kathy,
Yeah, there's no straight answer as to, we just plunge away one day at a time. But the other side is, the government, did the stimulus package. They're looking at a second stimulus package, which I feel, my opinion is, it'll be later, but it'll happen. How do we as a country and the government get over this? This mass amount of money that we have given to our country, whether it be the airlines or the PPP funds, and anybody else that was in the stimulus packages. That scares me.
What exactly scares you? What's going to happen? What terrible thing will happen?
I don't know.
Well, just make it up.
Are we printing money? Or,
We always print
are
money.
we
Yeah, of course.
borrowing all this money?
Yes, we're borrowing the money. We're borrowing some of it from ourselves. We borrow it from two places. We borrow it from the Federal Reserve, which prints it, not prints it technically, but creates it electronically. That's one place. And we borrow it from the rest of the world. What's the interest rate that we're paying on our money now?
Oh, it's zero, I think.
Yeah, the 10-year, I think the rate at which the United States government, us, with all of these debts we've taken on, $27 trillion I think in total cumulative debt at the moment, up from 20 just a year ago or something like that, 21. If I'm the government, right, and you're lending me money, I say, you are willing, the investors of the world, including the Federal Reserve, so that's certainly having an effect. But right now, all I have to do is pay you 0.2% a year for 10 years. It's a 10-year bond, or a 10-year bill, technically, Treasury bill. And so why wouldn't I borrow till the cows come home? In fact, the administration has talked about issuing 50-year bonds. If you're going to lend me the money because you can't figure out any other safer place to put your money, I'm a damn fool if I don't take it, right? At 0.63%. I mean, if inflation happens again, and that's one of the great concerns, right? That the dollar will be worth less because there'll be so many dollars sloshing around out there. And so therefore, wouldn't there have to be inflation? The dollar would go down in value. And therefore you'd have to, if you're going to lend money, you'd have to get a higher rate of interest to cover the inflation. And I can borrow the money right now with a $27 trillion cumulative debt for, 0.2% for 10 years, lock that in. That's why the administration was talking, Mnuchin was talking about 50 years. So this has been something you will recall that when in 2008, there were people wringing their hands and insisting that inflation was around the corner because of precisely this. That was the stimulus package, by the way, that you may remember didn't go through initially until Henry Paulson, the Treasury Secretary, scared Congress and scared the Republicans in Congress into putting it through. That was a $700 million package. Remember the TARP, the Troubled Assets.
Yeah, TARP.
RP, whatever RP stood for, something program. And everybody was afraid. I mean, all these people. I remember David Stockman, if you remember him. He was the head of Office of Management and Budget under Ronald Reagan. I spent a whole day with him where he was telling me about how this was, this was hell to pay, right? Because inflation was going to go up, interest rates were going to skyrocket because of the money that was spent back then. Nothing happened. Nothing happened.
Somebody that wants to jump in here.
Yeah, sure.
So, Social Security.
Yes.
Okay, 2019, the trustees said that we had gained some money in reserves, and they pushed the year that we run out of Social Security based on income versus costs on the payout to 2035.
Yeah.
Despite the pandemic, and what everybody's not hearing anything about is there's going to be some sort of an adjustment that severely has to be made with the lack of any payroll taxes being deferred right now, because that's money that's losing interest and accumulating in accounts as we see the future, where the number of people starting to collect is going to exceed what we're receiving for revenues.
Yep. I'm a world expert on this, right? I show you this. Here you go. This is there I am. Where am I? I'm down here somewhere, right? This and notice this isn't just a bestseller. This is a runaway New York Times bestseller. So this and the James Beard Award, I think you should listen to me for and take down what I'm saying. That's how authoritative I am. So on Social Security and cooking, the argument I make in that book, and you're welcome to get a copy for $1.95 or something online, a used copy, is so the trust fund is bullshit. I forgot. Okay, good. Emerson is gone. I suddenly thought, oh my goodness, Emerson is here. But he's no longer with us for the moment. There's no trust fund. This business about running out of money, I think, just in my opinion, right? So you're asking or you're stating, and I'm telling you what I think. Social Security is simply an obligation to the U.S. government the same way defense is. There's no defense trust fund. What are we going to do? End the military because we ran out of money in the defense trust fund? No, we just will, there will be adjustments, I assume. I mean, after all, we're all living longer. Some of us, like me, are working longer than anybody used to work. So it will make sense as happened in 1983 when all of you have a different retirement age, a full, it's called the FRA, the full retirement age. And that's extended now to age 67. It was 65 back in 1963. It'll probably be extended again. There may be some adjustment to make the, right now, only 85%, the maximum of, the taxable maximum on Social Security benefits, no matter what they are, is 85%. I could see that becoming, in a sense, means tested. That is, if you make more than a certain amount of total income, it goes to 100%. What I've been sure will happen, hasn't happened yet, so I'm certainly not right yet, is that the ceiling on Social Security wages will rise. It rises every year. It rises with inflation or with wages. I can't remember which. So it rises every year. But right now, somebody could look it up for me, but I think it's like 133,000 or something like that. Maybe it's 140 or something like that.
Right now.
What, 137? Okay,
Yes.
so 137. If you make more than $137,000 a year, like Tony's friends in, in plumbing, you don't pay that 12.4%. You half paid by your employer, half by you, but it's 12.4% is the payroll tax. You don't pay any of that on anything above 137,000. That hasn't changed. And so there's some, as the economy has become more unequal in terms of incomes, more and more of the total income, of the country, not talking capital gains here, of earned income is exempt from Social Security tax. So I've always assumed and continue to assume that one of the muddle through adjustments that will be made is that that ceiling will be raised. I don't know when it'll happen, but so it'll be some combination of things that will adjust but those are reasonable adjustments, and it may be prompted by people being, like you are, worried about the trust fund being depleted. But it will be because they're politically sensible adjustments rather, I think, than then suddenly we're going to run out of money and people aren't going to get their Social Security checks. Just isn't going to happen. It might be not going to happen for a very bad reason. People like Carol and me vote more than you all do. I mean, probably not members of a Rotary Club, but than younger people. And nobody's going to alienate us to the point that they're going to say we're going to stop paying you your Social Security. Right. So that's what I think about Social Security.
Very good.
Fair enough. All right. Well, we're getting to the cap of the hour. So I got a question from Julia. Said, if you're stuck at home during COVID, how do you find your story ideas? What do you read? What do you monitor to find trends and stories? Or are they fed to you by PBS? When Carol, you'll be happy to know that when I worked for Mother Jones in the 70s, I used to send them, they were on the West Coast, as you point out, and I was the East Coast editor, and I would send them lists of story ideas on yellow paper, I remember, with carbon copies or something. And I would send them 60 story ideas because everything's a story. Right.
Tony's got a story there. Kathy's got a story about commercial banks. Julia's got a story about what's happening with regard to the companies she does her CPA work for. Your husband, Deborah, because his name isn't there, has a story about Social Security. And I guarantee you, Carol will have a story, Valerie has a story, Marion has a story, everybody here will have a story. The story ideas, if you're open to the world and talking to people and reading, and I'm listening, reading all the time, and mainly talking to people, they're bountiful. It's a cornucopia. There's never an end to the number of stories that you could do. And now, for me, because of the convenience with which I can do stories, I can be much more on the news than heretofore, than in the past. So that anything, we can be, okay, here's a story, here's the latest story is, so let's, the questions you're asking is that what's going to happen to the new stimulus bill? What are all the implications of the new stimulus bill? What places will be most affected. Why aren't there, and I am doing the story that Tony was talking about. How come people aren't flocking to the jobs that are there that pay well? There aren't a billion, plumbing jobs, or even plumbing, electricity, industrial lathe, and all the rest. So we shouldn't, it's not going to employ everybody. But why aren't people doing those things? And it's some combination, I think, as I've said, of, people being, wealthy enough not to have to do them, them having lost their luster. I'm sure Tony's story is part of it. You're supposed to go to college, but that, I think, is because of the, increasing inequality in the labor market and the compensation that different jobs bring. And on and on. So the problem, Julia, of having enough stories, that is, the story ideas are a dime a dozen. The carrying out the stories in a way that makes them interesting and tells you something and teaches you something about the world, that's the challenge.
Fair enough. Well, we really appreciate you coming and speaking to us, Paul. We really got a lot of good information from you this evening and a little entertainment.
Well, thanks for having me. As you can see, I enjoy doing this, and I enjoy finding out what's going on, listening to Tony, Kathy, Julia. So only sorry I couldn't hear you all.
Oh, that's quite all right. But thank you again. And just for your participation, I will send you a certificate. We will make a donation to Polio Plus in your name, which is
That'd be great.
set up to eradicate polio as a thank you. So you will get that email.
That's all I could have asked for.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Very nice meeting you.
You as well. Does anybody care to stay on to do the card drawings? We are due to do another 5-card drawing for the spreadsheet. If you want, I can do it now, or I can hold it off till next week.
So we already finished one?
No, we still have 2 cards left to draw.
Oh, I would draw.
Okay. So we will go ahead and go down the list then. If you're present, obviously we'll show you the card and then we'll write them in. So the first one we have is Ken Brennan. Actually, I'm surprised Ken's not on. So Ken's got the 2 diamonds.
I couldn't open that
The file?
the file. Yeah.
Okay, I'll double check it. I'll upload it to DACDB too. It should automatically been. Chris Cameron. I gotta see it. You gotta tell me what it is. 5 of hearts. All right, Blaze.
Queen of Hearts.
Okay, and then Kathy.
Kathy's got an ace of clubs.
I
Ooh.
don't think it does me any good though.
Alfred.
8 of diamonds.
Karen.
King of clubs.
Okay. Ed.
Jack of spades.
Ed has actually, I think, the best hand at this moment, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Tracy.
Tracy, Jack of clubs.
Okay. And myself.
9 of clubs.
Okay. Julia.
4 of hearts.
All right. Marie.
Queen of clubs.
All right. Carol.
8 of clubs.
Not gonna be any clubs left.
Yeah, really, lots of clubs.
Walt.
Shuffle.
Jack of diamonds.
All right. Valerie
2 of spades.
and Marcia.
7 of diamonds.
And then you are oddball.
King of diamonds.
Okay. Right. So I'll update that spreadsheet and reattach it, and I'll upload it. If you have trouble seeing it, just let me know and I'll shoot it to you directly.
Hey Deb, did I already pull my 2 extras?
You did.
Okay, I thought so.
So the extra card,
Congratulations on being one of the winners of the baseball thing so far with the Yankees.
yeah. And they're all in the running for the end too.
So do we have enough?
So that's gonna be good. And we had our football winners. I don't know if everybody sees that.
I tell you, Janet Landis, she's really lucky.
This week.
I know, isn't she?
Janet.
The Landises, my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had Carl Kokomore, Don Landis, and Joe Cirillo as our winners for the football.
Nice.
Okay. Well, I know we've gone a little bit over, so I won't keep you any longer. So we'll let Tony lead us out with the four-way, and wish you all a good night.
Okay. The four-way test of the things that we think say or do. Number one, is it the truth? Number two, is it fair for all concerned? Number three, will it build goodwill and better friendship? And number four, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate you doing that. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. And we will see you next week. We will do the same hybrid in person and Zoom at lunchtime at the Elks.
If anybody wants to know where I got my lights and stuff, just send me an email. I'll send you a link to it.
All right. Thanks, Tony.